says, on the first day of every week. On the first day of every week. It was a regular giving. It wasn't haphazard. It was a regular giving. And secondly, the second principle that we learn from this passage is involved giving. Involved giving. On the first day of every week, each one of you, it is involved giving. It means everyone is involved in giving. It is 100% participation in giving. Not everyone may give the same amount, but they got involved in giving. Sometimes when we think about giving, we think that person should do it because that person is rich. That person is well-to-do and he has to do it. But Paul says, each one of you. It was 100% participation, including the children, including the adults, including everyone. Paul didn't tell the wealthy in Corinth to contribute. All right, I believe, that one reason Paul doesn't just tell the wealthy to contribute goes back to the pride of the Corinthians. There were many rich people in Corinthians. There were many. Many Corinthians were rich. They're well-to-do. When you read the passage in chapter 11, he talks about those who are rich who eat, before the poor. They were wealthy there. But Paul wasn't targeting just the rich. All right. The other reason, would be obviously that no Christian shall feel the obligation of another, especially when it comes to the individual responsibility to give. Right? You want everyone to involve in giving. Involved giving. The second principle is involved giving. He does not leave anybody out. It is not the amount that matters. Right? It is not the amount that is important. It is a continual reminder as we come to God's house. It's a continual reminder that you are freely received and therefore you freely give. It's a continual reminder. I pray that each and every one of us will be involved. The amount doesn't matter, but the involvement is important. Everyone is involved. Everyone involved in giving. It is not the sum, it is the heart. Because giving is the matter of heart. Everyone should involve in giving. In our church, there are not many rich people. And sometimes, we can say, when you look at the poor people or say, you don't have to give, right? By the way, if you're visiting us, this church, this morning, we don't talk about giving all the time, all right, in case you're visiting us this morning. All right, this is something that, that I felt in my heart to share. In our church, there are some poor people. And we do encourage them to give because, they need to learn to give because their breakthrough is in giving. The breakthrough that they're going to receive for their life is in giving. As they sow the seed, and they're going to see the harvest. I had a friend in Australia, when I was, doing my theological study in Australia in Perth. I had a friend who went for a mission field, all right, in China. And he went to a very rural area in China. He went to the interior part of China where there is a village and there's a paddy field, right? And he saw the people in that village was very poor, and he went for a mission work. And when he went there, they took him to a barn, to a storeroom, and he saw sacks of rice being stacked up. There are many sacks of rice, being stacked up in the storeroom. And he was so amazed, that there are many, and why the people are not eating the grain, the grain of rice. Why they're not taking the rice, sacks of rice and cook it and give it to the people. And what they said amazed him. They said, these are the seed that we have to sow. If we eat this seed, there will be no harvest. If we eat this seed, this rice, these grains, there will be no harvest in the future. And they have to sow that seed for the next harvest. I believe that, that God has put in our hands seeds. God has put in our hands seeds. As we sow that seeds, they're going to bear fruit. Amen. God wants us to give so that we can see the breakthrough. A few years back, that I had this impression from the Lord, teach on giving for the whole month in my church. And I don't, talk about giving much in our church, all right, because we are afraid to be misunderstood, that we are after their money. So therefore, I don't talk much. But I see in my church, many years back, there were many needy people, right? Many poor people, that came from the flats. And there was many needy people. The Lord impressed upon my heart is 100 days financial breakthrough. 100 days financial breakthrough. And I told the church, and that I'm going to teach about giving for the whole month. The principle of giving, the principle, the biblical principle of giving and receiving. All right, giving is also involved in receiving. So I, that thought, and I put a logbook at the entrance of the church. All right, as they come every week, as they come for prayer, as they come for the Sunday service, I want them to write down their testimony, the breakthrough they had on their financial. All right, and I also told the church about the tithes, and I also told the church, the principle of wisdom. And I also told the church about how they need to save. And I also told the church, how they need to get out of debts. All right. And I also taught the church about hardworking. The book of Proverbs, the book of Proverbs says, go and learn from the ants. All right. How they work hard. You need to work hard. All right. Not only that you know how to give, but you also need to work hard, and how you need to exercise wisdom. All right. And saving and so on. And within that 100 days, there were so many testimonies. So amazing that many had a financial breakthrough. Many, their needs were met. Some bought their houses. Some bought cars. And some had their debts be cancelled. So I believe that God is causing us to rise up. Probably, this morning, you have gone through many challenges after the pandemic, and you have slowed down in your giving. Probably, you're slowed down in your generosity. All right? But I believe that God wants us to be radical in generosity. I believe God is calling us to be radical in generosity. That our life is not based on our circumstances, that God is not limited in any way, that God is able to fulfill His word, His principles, works, no matter what is the situation, no matter how gloomy and how difficult the situation is, God is able to fulfill His word. And we read that in the book of Genesis chapter 26, how Isaac sowed in the land during the famine. And there was a great famine, and Isaac sowed in the land, and there was 100% growth. All right, he received 100-fold. That shows that God's principle worked, and God is not limited in any way. It is involved in giving. Number 3, it's a purposeful giving. It is a purposeful giving. On the first day of every week, each one of you should set aside a sum of money. Set aside a sum of money. It means a purposeful and intentional in giving, not haphazard or random. Our giving should be more purposeful, more prepared and planned in advance. Do we do that on Saturday? All right, do we, really pray about it? Or is it a haphazard? Or is it someone comes to the pulpit and they tell you some stories, that you get excited, or you heard some good preaching and you get excited, and it's emotional giving. It was not an emotional giving. Paul was talking about purposeful giving. It was a purposeful giving. That means it's not haphazard or random. It's intentional. All right? It needs to be a purposeful giving. The third principle is referring to the fact that in that culture, people got paid every day. So they were to go home and put aside in the sugar bowl each day a certain amount of money. All right? So that on Sunday, they have a larger amount to bring to the service. It is not just a haphazard or random, it's a purposeful. They were not merely giving to nothing or everything, but they had determined that they could have a part in a specific need, and they were giving regularly to meet that need. All right, it was a purposeful. This is a very important principle. I find a lot of people today only respond to emotional appeals. When there's emotional appeal from the pulpit or like even from the email, there are thousands of emails, that has been sent out on this giving and appeals. You get them in the mail as I do. And all these appeals to give to crying babies and hurting people all around the world. They like to put the picture of crying baby and they put some suffering people, all right? And, all these are legitimate, appeals for help. All right? All right, I'm not criticizing that. All right? It is a legitimate appeal. But what I'm stressing is that these things need to be investigated. Sometimes we don't know where the money goes as to who's responsible for handling their funds. There are a lot of fakes and pretenders in the world today, all right, making appeals and building fortune on the generosity of Christians. Because they know the Christians are very generous, all right? And they are, they like to take advantage on the generosity of the Christians who give to anything without investigation, all right? But here Paul says that the Corinthian should make a decision and have a definite objective in giving. Last week I was walking at the Speed Mart, 99, a Speed Mart. There was one lady, without a leg, was, asking for donation, all right? And she told me, I want 3 ringgit for my meal, okay? I want 3 ringgit for my meal. So when I saw her, all right, I thought I want to help her more than just 3 ringgit, and I want to find out where she lives, all right? So I asked her, can I know where do you live, all right? She immediately told me this, don't ask me where I live. If you want to give. If not, you go away. You better go away. Wow, I thought, wow, what a demanding. And I saw the bowl or the container that she has. There are lots of more than 3 ringgit, all right? Probably more than 50 over, all right, ringgit, and it's full of money. And the way that she says is so amazing. The way that she appeals. You give, don't ask me where I live. All right, I don't want to give any information, but just give and go. Sometimes we need to know, all right, whether these appeals are genuine. And Paul says you should set aside a sum of money. It means purposeful and intentional in giving and not haphazard or random or not. Some Christians have emotional giving. When they feel the preaching is good or the day the pastor says something very emotional, they feel very emotional in giving or random giving. But Paul is talking about a purposeful giving. A Christian should purpose in your heart. That's what, the other verses in 2 Corinthians also said, that you give out of, that you don't give out of compulsion, but out of, that you purpose in your heart. That you purpose in your heart. Purposeful giving is very important. Point number 4, proportional giving in keeping with your income. All right, it's a proportional giving. Not everyone gives the same amount. Not everyone gives the same amount. Those who have more will give more, and those who have less will give less. All right? Those who have more will give more, and those who have less will give less. All right? That's the tithes. When we talk about tithes, we talk about 10%. It is always good to start with the 10%. Someone come and ask me, Pastor, these tithes are only in the Old Testament. Does the New Testament teach us to give 10%? All right? Okay, some of you are, stood up and that you want to know the answer. So I told him, you are right. The New Testament doesn't tell us to give 10%. And he was very happy. But in the New Testament, everything that belongs to you belongs to God. I said in the New Testament, because you give your life to God, everything that you own belongs to God. And that person says, Pastor, I better stick you to the 10%. Right? The Bible tells us, the best thing is you start with the 10%, but as the Lord increases your faith, you give more. Your giving reveals your heart. Actually, what do you really care in life? What do you really care in life? Your giving will tell us that. Right? Your giving will tell me that, what you care in life. All right? Start with the 10%. All right? Start with the 10%. And let the Lord increase. One of the best way, to understand our level of faith is by giving. By giving, I want to see my faith being increased every year. One of the ways that I check my faith is through giving. My giving will tell me the level of faith that I have in this God. Sometimes, when I come to the church, there's a voice that tells you, don't give. If you give, you will suffer, you will do, like what will happen tomorrow. When I hear that voice, I will empty everything that is in my wallet. And that voice will stop after that. The voice will stop after that. All right? But be a cheerful giver. It's a proportional giving, all right, in keeping with this income. All right? The more, sometimes the more the Lord blesses, sometimes we are very hesitant to give. It was very easy to give when you earn 1,000 ringgit, you give 100 ringgit. When you earn 10,000, you are giving 1,000, not bad. When you earn 100,000 and you have to give 10,000, that's where the voice begins to speak to you. With 10,000, you can do so many things. All right? But let it be a proportional giving. God is so good that He talks about the proportional giving. In keeping with your income, you have more, you give more. If you have less, you give less. But the Bible always helps us to start with the 10%. Be faithful in your giving. If you are a person, all right, probably that you have been discouraged, you are going through a challenging time, I want to encourage you. Or if you have KIV, your tithes, your giving, I want to encourage you this morning. Start giving your tithes. When someone comes to our church and they tell them they have a financial, difficulties, when they come and tell me they're going through challenges, the first thing I ask, how is your giving? Pastor, if I give, I cannot survive. Really? I've gone through that. When I receive my salary, the first thing I do, I don't even wait for Sunday. I immediately online transfer my tithes. The first thing that I do when I receive my salary, before anything else, it's not only what I give, but how I give is important to God. For God, is how you give is important. By transferring it through online, I'm telling God, you are number one in my life. Your tithes is a worship. I'm worshiping you with my tithes. I'm putting you first. It's not only what I give, but how I give. And the first thing I do, that I transfer it online, my tithes. And those people who told me and challenged me, Pastor, if I give, I will not have anything. And they come and tell me, a miracle happened. Something happened. I had a breakthrough. I had a financial breakthrough. The key for your financial breakthrough is when you start to give. When you start to sow the seed. Like those people in China, how my friend went to China for the mission field and he said, he saw the sacks of grain that need to be sown for the next hours. Your next hours is in your hand, in your tithes. As you give faithfully, I believe the breakthrough is coming. I believe that God's principle work, and God doesn't forfeit us. God doesn't cheat us. God doesn't take our money and says, you suffer. But I believe that what is given in your hand is a seed for your financial breakthrough. In case this morning you have stopped giving, if you have stopped your tithe, I want to encourage you, please start it back. But probably this is a prophetic word for some of you. Some people come and tell me, Pastor, I have not tithed for 3 years, but I've kept a record. One day I'm going to put all these 3 years into the back. I say, don't worry about the 3 years. Forget about it. Because the more you think about the 3 years, you will not give. Forget about that. Write it off. Start afresh. Start afresh. All right? God is not angry with you. All right? Don't worry about the 3 years that you didn't tithe. All right? Forget about that, but start afresh. Because some people are waiting for them to clear all the backlogs of 3 years. And that's not going to happen sometime, because when you look at the amount, it's very big. It's a proportional giving.